I stood outside the Skyline Sovereign Club on Christmas Eve, watching my breath turn to frost in the bitter New York air. 7 years since I'd set foot in a room with my family. 7 years since my father told me I would amount to nothing. I was wearing a simple black dress I could have bought at any department store, carrying a handbag that cost less than the appetizers being served inside. I dressed this way on purpose. I wanted to see their faces. Tonight, they were about to find out exactly how wrong they'd been. My name is Grace Holloway. I'm 31. My father, Charles Holloway, is CEO of Holloway Securities, a Wall Street empire built on other people's money and his own unshakable belief that he was never, ever wrong. I pushed through the glass doors into a lobby dripping with crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing somewhere in the distance. This was his world. I had once tried to belong here. The maitre d' led me to the private dining room. Through the frosted glass, I could hear my father's voice commanding the room the way it always did. I opened the door. Every conversation stopped. My mother, Eleanor, froze with a wineglass halfway to her lips. My brother Daniel's face cycled through surprise, guilt, something like relief. And at the head of the table sat my father, older now, silver spreading through his hair, but his eyes exactly the same. Cold, calculating, measuring everyone against some invisible standard only he understood. Grace, he said my name like a stock that had underperformed. You actually came. He gestured to an empty chair at the far end of the table, as far from him as physically possible. Sit. We were just discussing the new partnership with Reed Capital. I grew up in a house that looked like a museum and felt like a courtroom, a Georgian mansion on 12 acres in Greenwich, a symbol of what my father's ambition had achieved. My earliest memories are of silence, not the peaceful kind, but the tense, watchful quiet of people afraid to make mistakes. Daniel, 3 years older, was claimed from birth as the heir. I was the afterthought, the daughter my father never planned for and never knew what to do with. He gave Daniel a BMW for his 16th birthday. He forgot mine entirely. Daniel spent summers interning at Holloway Securities, shaking hands with senators. I was told to stay home, stay quiet, stay out of the way. Every Christmas, my father hosted an elaborate holiday gathering for his business world. Powerful men in expensive suits, wives dripping in diamonds. I was never allowed to attend. I used to press my face against the upstairs banister, watching the glittering world below, my mother promising every year that next year would be different. It never was. When I was 15, I showed my father a stock prediction algorithm I'd written, proud of the pattern recognition work behind it. He barely glanced at the screen before pushing it away. Machines cannot replace instinct, he said. That is something you will never understand. The dismissal wasn't just disagreement. It was a verdict already final. Daniel was the heir. I was the disappointment. No evidence would ever change that equation. The fight that ended everything happened 3 weeks before my 24th birthday, 6 months after I finished a master's in computational mathematics at Stanford, with honors and a thesis my advisor called groundbreaking. My father offered me an entry-level role, reporting to Daniel, implementing decisions made by others. When I asked for real authority over the algorithms, his expression hardened. Your brother earned his position through dedication and loyalty, he said. He didn't run off chasing foolish dreams about computers. Something in me snapped. 24 years of silence collapsed under one dismissive sentence, and I told him exactly what his favoritism had cost me. Every forgotten birthday, every locked door at Christmas, every time he looked at me like a stranger who'd wandered into his house by mistake. You are emotional, he said, walking to the door and opening it wide. This is exactly why women don't belong in finance. Then, get out. You are no daughter of mine. I spent the next year sleeping on a friend's couch in Bushwick, waitressing at a midtown diner, cleaning hotel rooms at night, listening to investment bankers talk over their coffee, and quietly building predictive trading models in my head. Every rejection from firms that had courted me before smelled like my father's fingerprints. Then a stack of forgotten research papers in a hotel suite led me to a former Deutsche Bank quant named Marcus Webb, who connected me to founders and investors who judged me on skill, not my last name. At 26, I launched a fund called GH Venture with $3 million in seed capital, under total anonymity. No name in the filings, just algorithms that outperformed every major firm in the city. Within 18 months, assets crossed $500 million. By 31, my personal stake was worth over $1 billion. Nobody knew that Grace Holloway, the worthless daughter erased from the family story, was the woman behind it. Then everything collided. My father's aggressive expansion into algorithmic trading was failing badly, hemorrhaging money, quietly begging Reed Capital for a lifeline. Jonathan Reed, the firm's chairman, had no idea I was Grace Holloway. To him, I was Sarah Harrison, senior representative of GH Venture. When he told me my father was desperately seeking exactly the technology I'd built in secret, I knew the moment I'd waited 7 years for had arrived. My father invited the whole family to his Christmas Eve celebration, the very event I'd been locked out of my entire childhood. I met my brother Daniel in Boston beforehand. He confessed he'd watched our father crush me for years and done nothing to stop it. I told him what I'd built. He asked to stand with me. At the dinner, my father did exactly what I expected. 30 minutes into the meal, he set down his fork with deliberate precision and turned to me in front of everyone. "So, Grace, are you still working at that diner, or have you finally found a real job?" He laughed at his own cruelty, asked if I finally understood what I'd given up chasing, ridiculous dreams about computers. I told him I understood a great many things. He expected me to crumble. Instead, I smiled, small, barely visible, and something in his face flickered with uncertainty for the first time all night. He didn't know about the fund. He didn't know Jonathan Reed himself was in the room, aware of exactly who I was. He didn't know I was worth more than everyone at that table combined. He would, before the night was over. Jonathan stood and addressed the room. He described GH Venture's remarkable returns, the mystery around its founder. And then he turned toward me. "The founder of GH Venture is present tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce the billionaire founder of GH Venture, Grace Holloway." Silence. My father turned the color of old paper. "That's impossible," he said. I rose and walked toward him, letting every step carry the weight of every insult I'd swallowed. "The partnership you announced tonight, the technology that was supposed to save Holloway Securities, it comes from my fund, from the daughter you told would never amount to anything." He tried to recover, tried to claim credit, calling it tough love that had shaped my success. I wasn't having it. In front of his stunned colleagues, I laid out exactly what tough love had actually looked like: the forgotten birthdays, the locked door during Christmas parties, the algorithm he'd mocked, the daughter he'd thrown out with nothing. Daniel stepped forward and confirmed every word. My mother rose from her seat, crossed the room, and took my hand instead of my father's. Then I gave him his terms. GH Venture would take a controlling interest in his technology division. He would step back from operations entirely. Daniel would run the restructuring. Refuse, and I'd walk, taking Reed Capital's backing with me, collapsing his company within a year. He had no leverage left. "It seems I have no choice," he said, his voice hollow. "You have exactly the choice you gave me 7 years ago," I told him. "The difference is, I'm offering you a future. That's more than you ever offered me." I didn't stay for the fallout. I walked out of that club into the cold December air and didn't look back. My father stood alone among his glittering decorations, in front of every person he'd spent his life performing for, finally understanding what it felt like to lose control of his own story. Holloway Securities restructured under Daniel's leadership. Technically alive, technically saved, but it will never again be my father's kingdom. He kept his title and lost every ounce of power that mattered. That was never mercy. It was the only revenge precise enough to matter. Making the man who built his identity on control watch someone else hold all of it. GH Venture kept growing. I kept my name off the paperwork exactly as long as I wanted to, and not 1 second longer. The girl who was told machines could never replace instinct built an empire her father's instincts never saw coming. And she built every bit of it without him. If you've ever been written off by someone who was supposed to believe in you, this one's for you. Drop a comment. What would you have said at that table?